answer. It's still kind of early on the assessment. It's working, it's going very well.
I appreciate the fact that you are going through every facility, opening every door, because that's what it takes, as you know, to get that true 100% assessment and work the audit there. So thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. The next item is public information request procedure changes. I just wanted to have Dr. Zimmer come and give us a general idea. I didn't realize, I think I realized it, but I didn't comprehend it until we were talking about it the other day, about just some subtle changes to the information request, how it goes through the emails and all that.
Yeah, that's right. So good evening. So as a result of the 86 legislative session, we got more than just AB3. We got a massive omnibus of different bills that affect the procedures that governmental entities like us have to follow. So Senate Bill 943 and 944 both carried with them some rules changes, procedural changes to both the Public Information Act as well as some other changes regarding record keeping. I just really wanted to, tonight I just want to briefly talk about two changes that are important for you to know, just because you may interact with citizens who request public information, and I want you to be crystal clear on our procedures for that, because what the legislature did was essentially make it easier for citizens to request information and make it easier for us to keep track of that information so that we know exactly whether or not we're on track with our responses. We know exactly where to go to figure out whether or not we have responses due. So you can see here, this is my information sheet. Can you pull up the website, please? There's a website link right there. I just want to show them where this lives. So I'll tell you what the two kind of effective pieces are first. Effective September 1st, if you just go to the communications page on lvisd.org, the link is on the action agenda sheet, Lisa. Thank you so much. So effective September 1st, the legislature allowed governmental entities to designate a single email address for the receipt of public information requests. So before, any email address that belonged to any employee in a governmental entity could receive a public information request, and that entity had to respond, and if not, would be out of compliance. Now, you'll see that we have designated publicinfo@lvisd.org as our single receipt address for public information requests. Also, the legislature gave the school districts and other entities the ability to only respond to requests that are sent to that email address. Now, we can still take requests in person or via mail. Those are acceptable options as well. But via email, which it's like 98% seriously of public information requests are sent in via email now. We will only respond to those requests if they come to that email address. The other provision there from the legislature is that we make sure we tell our citizens, we post it publicly, make sure we tell our citizens if they send in a PIA and it's to Jordan.Zimmer@lvisd.org, I don't just go like, I'm not going to respond to them. We don't want to be unhelpful, we want to show good customer service, but it just means that we inform that citizen, thank you so much for your request, if you'll send it here, we will get right on that and track it for you. It's just a way to streamline the process, make it easier for us to keep track of it. So if you receive public information requests, you can ask the requester to forward it to that email address, and then we'll take it from there. We're monitoring that every day. Also just know that if there were ever some complications or frustrations about a request not sent to that address, not being responded to, we are protected and in compliance with the law. Any questions about that?
Once you do receive a request, refresh my memory, what's the turnaround time?
So within 10 days, the requester needs either a response with the information or a request for clarification. If you send a request for clarification and receive that, you have another 10 days to respond with the information. If you request a ruling from the Attorney General, the timeline gets a little more complicated from there, but the vast majority of our requests, I mean, almost all of them without exception, are just standard. We receive them, we clock it for 10 days, and at that point we respond or we ask for a clarification and then we get it to them quickly. But 10 days is generally the guideline.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that's business days, by the way, right? So that would not count holidays, days that were closed, or if we ever had a designated skeleton crew day, not something we really ever experienced, but like if there was only one person in central office, the legislature, the Attorney General wouldn't count that as a day we would have to count on the clock. But 10 days is the general guideline.
But really, you're responding to it as quickly as possible.
Right. If it's possible, one thing that we do is for some requests that may come from like a college recruiter for information from, for information about our high school students, or maybe it's from a military recruiter for information about our seniors, juniors, or seniors. We'll respond to that before 10 business days. That's the as quickly as possible kind of customer service piece. It's just with those more complex requests, the Attorney General, to kind of keep the peace, says, okay, we're going to give you 2 business weeks, basically, to get this together and get back to them.
As far as information saying, hey, we've kind of had a change in the way we're receiving this information or this public request, that is on the website now.
That's correct.
It's live and active.
Yeah, that was on our website on September 1st, actually. So
Okay.
the day that this rule went into effect, I went ahead and updated the website just to make it crystal clear. And then we have had requesters who have sent in requests to other places, and I've just followed up with them and said, we would be happy to help you get this information, just forward it to this address where we're monitoring this. So we're going to be proactive. We're not going to be jerks and not respond to people. But we just want to use this to help us stay organized and help people know where they can go. Other questions?
No, thank you so much.
Okay,
Appreciate
thanks.
that.
Appreciate you.
Now we'll move on to discussion and action items. First item is the consent agenda. Items to be approved in one all-encompassing motion and discussion is desired on a particular item to be removed from the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 7-0. The next item is a consider and take possible action to approve the 2018-2019 annual financial report and audit. Ms. Cameron and Mr. Gonzalez.
Good evening. I would like to introduce Mr. Bill Bond with Armstrong Bond and Associates. He will give you a brief overview of our annual financial report. Thank you.
Now, this is another groaner of an agenda item, so I want to be brief, but I'm here for your benefit, so please stop me. My goal is not to go so fast that you get no benefit from me, so if I'm muttering after going too fast, just yell and I'll stop. But as I'm sure you all know, we're an auditor. Our job is to give you an impartial look at your financial statements and give you our opinion as to whether these numbers are actually good. So we've done our due diligence. We do help the district a little bit with some journaling. And I give Ms. Callie a lot of credit. We met her in June. She was only on the job for a few weeks. So this was kind of a tough one for her. But she really wanted to take a lot of this on, and she wants to take responsibility for it. So I'm really pleased about that. We saw a little bit of help this year because of the transition in finance position. There's 2 different directors. Well, Amy was the 3rd this last year. So we did have to help a lot this year, but it was better than the year before. And like I said, I'm optimistic that it's going to improve from there. Having said that, I wanted to jump in to just one page on the report, and it's the one they pulled up on the screen. So if you want to just kind of follow along, I can give you some of my 2 cents on here. First and foremost, what I forgot to say was we've issued a clean opinion on this financial statement, which is what TEA wants and what you guys want. We don't have any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, which again are problems for the first rating, so that won't be a challenge for you. We do have a letter that accompanies this report that's fairly straightforward, and it only has one thing I want to bring to your attention, which is the budgeting issue that we kind of talked about last year as well. As I mentioned, you're on your 3rd finance director for this last fiscal year. I think some of the budgeting issues that happened been going on for the last few years kind of continued this year because you had the same person preparing the budget. Having said that, though, we're over budget this year. If you look at the expenditures, the last expenditure there, the $29 million is what you spent in that 3rd actual column. And your final budget was the 28.8, so you were about $600,000 over. 77% of your budget this last year is payroll, and that's really where a lot of the problems were. You haven't been using your software to its fullest ability, and that's been kind of implemented this year, so a lot of the projections that were trying to be made before about estimating what your payroll was gonna be weren't very spot on, and that's kind of what led to some of this. But that should be better, and I've kind of put the screws in this calendar this year to try to make sure that the budget for 2020 is a better number, which of course House Bill 3 kind of throws a wrench in that. But I feel like it's a better number, and you have some wiggle room in there. I think the last budget I saw, which I guess is coming up later, has still a surplus anticipated in it, which will help. If you scroll to the top just a little bit, you'll see the revenues for the 2019 year, and this is the general fund. You'll see you beat your budget. There's also an increase of about $1 million from the year before. Most of that was related to property taxes. So when you scroll down a little bit, the overage and expenditures didn't hurt as much as you anticipated, but you did still decrease your fund balance to 1.6 million. So that leaves you with the 5.1 million at the end of the year. My rule of thumb, or my recommendation is 3 months. You're a little short of that now. You're about 70 days, so somewhere in the mid-2s. TEA has some new first rating indicators where they give you kind of an out for 2.5 months, so you might be able to kind of squeeze by on 2.5. But if you wanted to be at 3 months, you're about 1.4 million short of that. So if you were able to realize the excess you had in your 2020 budget, that would help get you a good chunk of the way there. Although after hearing earlier presentation, that may not come true, but I do think you might have a good opportunity of breaking even. One of the important things about this report is what TEA does with it next, and that's the first rating. And they're going to take this report and grade it next year, and we've met Dr. Wood and Ms. Cowley to go over what we think that first rating is going to be for next year. We do think you're going to pass. This is probably going to be a C for next year, and a lot of that's just based on your general fund balance. If you don't have a good, healthy base in there, a lot of the indicators are based on how much cash you have, whether your general fund was positive for the year, and how much extra you have to cover your debt. So some of those indicators, if you don't have a positive change in your general fund, you're kind of off on a bad foot to begin with. If you have a big balance there, you can kind of do whatever you want, you're still going to pass, and that kind of gets into it. And I know there were some questions earlier about the first rating. I'd be happy to answer any of those questions if you wanted to get into them. I think one of them was about the cash position. Yeah, so that indicator was for 90 days. I said three months. They want you to have 90. And then
so that would be a score. I think my question was in regards to the rating. I think we had a 6 in that rating.
mm-hmm.
And it was, wanting to understand the scale and what the drivers were for that 6. And
Sure.
Based on cash on hand.
Yeah, all of them start at 10, and then as you they have ranges where you lose 2 points. So you go in 2-point increments. So you were two notches below where they wanted you to be at the 90 on the cash on hand. The other one where you lost points was the admin ratio. You asked about that one. They have a very specific formula based on this. They look at those, all the lines on there they consider to be functions, and they consider 21 and 41 to be admin, and they take those as your numerator, and then the denominator are the first 3 and function 31. So they just do a simple math on these exact numbers, come up with a ratio. They say it should be, for your size district, because just graduated, they say you should be at 11.5%, you're at 14. The odd thing about that is it's fairly subjective. I mean, you might have a person out of campus that's in leadership, and the difference between 21 and 23 is pretty subjective. So do you want, are they instructional leadership or are they school leadership? Do you have some things coded in general administration that really are maybe school leadership? Well, school leadership would be a good one, but, or a guidance counselor, maybe if you have them in the wrong function. Those are things that you might want to scrub. And that's why we also do an estimate for next year, so you can kind of see what we think you're going to have, so you can start working on some of those issues. So if there's that admin ratio, for example, maybe you want to go through those couple of functions and say, all right, is there anything in here that probably shouldn't be in here that would help us get a little bit closer? And you're at 8 points instead of 10, so you're not far from where they want you to be, so it's maybe something you can pass.
You said the ratio should be, what did you say,
11.5%.
And we're at,
14.
That was last year, though.
And that was, you said the functions
That's,
21,
that's actually
23.
that's actually this report.
And that's for you said functions, looking at functions 21, 23, and 41?
It's 21 and 41 are the what they consider admins, those are the numerator of the
Okay.
ratio, and the bottom is 11, 12, 13, and 31. And when I talk about next year, they're taking this report, and so when you get your actual report next summer, they're basing it on this report. That's why we're trying to project it, so that C might be coming next year. I'm estimating you're gonna need about 78 points, and that 80 is kind of the probably gets you below. The other thing that I would be remiss in mentioning is that they've changed the first rating, so not the report you're looking at, but the report next year will be graded on a new system. We've also run kind of a hypothetical, if this report were to be graded and you're about the same scale. The bad point is they've raised the passing limit to 70 instead of 60, so you have fewer wiggle room points on there, and they've added some things like, do you have everything on your website? Is your enrollment projections close to what the actual attendance was? They'll ding you on that. So it's going to be a little touch and go. But if you can have a positive general fund for this next year, that would be a huge step in helping that first rating next year.
So going back to the ratio, so you're presenting this financial statement now, and we can't go in and look at, like you were saying, in 21, and see if there's anything that should be in 23. We can't make that change, so we're stuck with those ratios as they stand right.
Well, that's up to you. I mean, if you wanted to take another look at the report, you could. It would just require a meeting to get it approved to submit to TJ.
No, I don't, do you feel like that's pretty clean as it stands right
I
now?
think it is. When I first came on board, Dr. Wood actually had initiated a thorough review of how staff were assigned, and we did make some changes between functions to align where the staff were being charged compared to the work that they're actually doing. So I feel like this is a fairly accurate representation.
Okay, and I guess, is that gonna be a continual, ongoing thing as we're, changing positions or hiring or not hiring? We take a look at all of those functions and making sure that they're in the right spot off the bat.
Yes, and I'm working closely with Mr. Flores through that process.
Any other questions, comments?
So your one comment to the board is the budgetary item, and you feel like that is being addressed with the use of the software and projecting an accurate budget for the payroll function of the financials?
Right, and she alluded to it earlier about the accrual module in Texas, and that's what it does is once you put everybody in and say where they're supposed to be coded, it's on autopilot and it kind of tells you where it goes. One of the things that's, I think, been a problem budgeting-wise is that, as she mentioned, you have payroll that goes 12 months. So at the end of June, you still owe 2 more checks. And if you don't have that module turned on in your software, then it's a large estimate at the end of the year that you have to kind of go book. And every year it's been a tweak, and it's been a fairly large entry. And so if it's a surprise at the end of the year in terms of if your payroll grew a little bit, that accrual goes up, and you're kind of, oh wow, we didn't anticipate that. So that's been a challenge, I think, on part of the projection side of the budget, which the software should help fix that. Like I said, the software works, which didn't sound like it was working very well, but I think they're on track for that. And this year, there wasn't that large entry because Ms. Schweers had turned that on earlier in the year. So at the end of the year, we did not have a big adjustment to fix that. So I see that continuing where this next year we'll have a large accrual and booking that'll be unexpected. So I'm hoping that will make it a lot easier.
Sounds like we're getting better and better every, as we're going through and getting our processes on the time, so, just good news. Okay, anything else? I appreciate your time.
I
I move to approve the 2018-2019 annual financial report and audit.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's a certificate that TA would like signed for the residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is consider to take possible action on the 2019-2020 budget amendment. Ms. Kelly?
Hello again. The PDF, please. Did help if I turned it on. So I did continue to show the last two amendments that you had approved, so we don't forget what's changed so far. This amendment is really quite simple. As you know, the budget that we adopted at the beginning of the year didn't change significantly from the prior year. So as I've been meeting with principals and other staff and reviewing budgets with them, there have been some changes or adjustments, transfers that have been requested to help align our budget with where we're wanting to spend the money. A fairly large number of those transfers have been done within the same function and have not required an amendment, but are aligning our budget to our actual spending. But there are a few that would be transferring between functions, and so that is this column here. It's a net zero adjustment. There's not an increase or a decrease overall for these adjustments. The second item is related to additional funding for our special education program. This funding has already been received by the district, and so we're amending the budget to show that we've accepted the funding and we're allocating it specifically for special education. Any questions?
Can you just step through some of those? So we're changing from different function codes to other ones, all right? I guess I'm saying that right.
Yes.
So what are we taking from and where are we putting it? Can you just kind of step us through that?
Well, there's several ins and outs, but I can give you some of the high points. One example is the $16,500 that we're moving from our instructional leadership function. That was for contract services for a specific contract in that function that we did not renew or execute this year. So we're moving those funds, the majority of them are going to this function for professional development, which is really where we have a need for contract services right now. Then there's a few small changes to meet some of our high school needs and supplies for leadership at the high school. One of the things that our high school was challenged with last year was funding graduation in the campus budget, which had not been done before. And so this actually helps right-size some of the needs of the high school campus because they had to allocate so much funding to graduation in their budget last year. And then there's an adjustment here also for some fine arts related amounts.
So the things in the parentheses, those are reducing, and then, so that like the 14 is an addition.
Correct.
So the 14,000 that's being moved to staff development wasn't something that was budgeted for whenever we approved the budget this summer?
No, it wasn't in the budget as professional development when we adopted the budget this summer. That's not to say there wasn't anything budgeted for that, but we just feel like that particular amount, it's no longer needed under the instructional leadership function and can be better utilized in the staff development.
So my opinion on any savings that are realized as we go through this are moved to the estimated increase in fund balance until those items are needed in staff development. So instead of moving 14,000 directly to staff development that wasn't budgeted for, we are in a position where we need to continue to look for savings throughout the year, and if we're at a point where we know that 16.5 is no longer needed, it would be my recommendation that we move it to an estimated increase in fund balance.
I agree.
The ones in parentheses are items that were budgeted, but then, oh, we don't need that there after all.
Yes and no. I think there's a foundational assumption in that statement that there was some intention to the budget this year. And unfortunately, our leadership didn't really have an opportunity to say, I need money here as opposed to there this year. So this is after the fact, giving them an opportunity to make those type of adjustments.
And then moving forward to ensure that people do have a voice for leadership, as you said, we have procedures now in place to capture that, so next year we won't have the same situation.
It is my hope, if we're able to move forward with the budget work session in January,
Okay.
that I'll also be able to bring to you a proposed budget planning calendar and a process to educate you as our board of trustees on my recommended process, but also our leadership will be in attendance at that meeting.
Financial planning guide, in a sense.
Yes.
Okay.
And a calendar and timeline for how that will roll out.
I think you bring up a really good point, rather than just saying, oh, we'll just shift it, spend it over here instead. Let's put it back in the pocket and save it, you know. The fact that it wasn't budgeted in certain areas, well, they were gonna have to make do one way or another. So let's just tighten it down if we can tighten it down. And get in the habit of tightening down and making more with less. You know, I mean, I know it's a bitter pill at times, but if we want to see our financials go in the right direction, we're gonna have to do that. We can't just use them.
And to your testament, we're not used to seeing these on an interim basis. It's only at year end, whenever the money's already spent, we have to reallocate it to align with the budget. So I appreciate you bringing these to us as they occur.
I will say, the 14,000 would allow us to pay for some dual language professional development that is critical to that program. About 2,500 of it, we would like to utilize for that. I'm comfortable with the rest of it going to our projected fund balance until other needs arise.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads to some more questions. In my reasoning for understanding kind of where we taking it from and where we putting it to was, you know, kind of just what you said, you know, where are those savings that we found and where are those needs that we have? And so I don't think that we would be opposed to meeting needs, but I think that there's got to be some very, very strict scrutinized justification for, hey, we found 16.5 that we can live without in this budget, but we need 14 here. So I think that that would be very, very scrutinized. So, you know, just from a process standpoint of understanding that if you know, a couple of these areas have identified that we're going to shift it, you know, what are those justifications?
Or as you alluded to, kind of there's a couple items that are really like non-negotiables, they are definitely needs and not just wants. And so when something is a definite need, then we should be able to address that. Versus just saying,
Or if it was reallocated, allocated in this one spot for budgeting, but we determined that that's not the spot it needs to be in. It's the same expense, and it's gonna be the same dollars out the door. We just need to show it in a different spot. That's even, that's different as well. I didn't get the sense that we're just moving dollars to allocate them in the right bucket in some of these.
Right. The majority, really truly the only item that I would feel comfortable saying, let's let that fall to the fund balance projection is the, I guess it'd be 11.5 for the professional development.
So we're gonna get this reallocated and looked at and bring back next month? Is that kind of how we do this?
We can, if you want, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're comfortable with the majority of the changes, I believe we can make a motion to approve the amendment as presented with the change of 11,500 being allocated to our projected fund balance. If you would like more justification, detailed justification on every proposed amount, then I'm happy to do that next month.
So it would be changing this recommendation, with 11.5 going to, I'm sorry, I'm slow.
To our cash surplus fund.
because there's two other line items that are also positive
Yeah.
amount expenditures versus.
You'd be putting the 2,500 into the instructional leadership, if I can read that across, yes. The mentality that has happened here before you showed up is, well, we had the money, so let's spend it. And that's part of the reasons why we have a cash surplus deficit like we have. And then you say, you kind of preface your reports every time, it's lean times, and we need to act like it.
And I will say, we've met with every principal in the last month to review their campus budgets to actual for the quarter. And we talked about how just because you have a budget for something doesn't mean that you have to spend it. You're not necessarily going to lose it next year, but if you have the opportunity to save, every penny helps. And the amount of support that we're getting from principals is tremendous.
If I look at that correctly, the 14,000, instead of putting 14,000, allocating 14,000 for staff development, it would be just 2,500.
Correct.
Staff development. The 7,800 would still be an additional transfer to school leadership, and the 8,815 to guidance and counseling. And what did you say those two were for?
For a big part of that is right-sizing our high school leadership supply budgets.
Okay.
Another portion is our SPED. There's some shifts within our SPED budgets.
Because our enrollment changes drastically with special education.
Yes, and there may be additional changes to the SPED allocations in the coming months.
I guess I don't know. And how does that fall under school leadership monies and guidance and counseling monies?
Well, school leadership, that's going to be the high school portion.
That's always high school portion.
No, it would be the principal's budget for their campus.
Okay.
That's not instruction directly for students.
So it's a total of 30,615 that's being moved around, right? So that's, at least that's kind of numbers. So then 2,500 is going towards staff development. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's the idea. That's the thought, right?
And then what is then, is that it for, and then the rest of it go to surplus or to,
It's titled estimated increase in fund balance.
right,
So it'd be 11.
3615 minus 2500? That's 28,000 to fund balance?
No.
No. The only one that's being affected is the 14,000.
Okay,
So 14,000 less the 2,500 will leave.
okay, so the 7,800 and the
Those are
8,800
gonna stay like
stay
that.
there. Okay.
So we want to
Okay.
I do think we have other opportunities to identify savings that we could allocate to fund balance, but that's going to be part of the bigger conversation that hopefully we can have in January.
So in your opinion, the 14,000 is the one we can look at and try to get savings on. The other one, to the 7,888, those are needed.
Right.
So our responsibility is not to dive into $7,800 worth of cost, but overall, we would like to move forward if there are savings available to move on to an estimated increase in fund balance versus just automatically reallocating.
Yes, sir.
I agree.
So do we want to move forward with approving this with the stipulation of 2,500, or do you want to table it until next month?
I'm good with moving with the 2,500.
I'm good.
That's flat to fund balance.
Amendment, with just the allocation,
Yeah.
one change.
Right.
I make a motion to approve this budget amendment with the changes that instead of 14,000 going into the instructional leadership, it would be 2,500, and the remaining going into the increase in fund balance.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate all the
Yeah.
work that you're doing.
Yes.
Yes,
Very
much,
much.
very much. needed.
Clarity, yes.
Considering the possible action to approve the December 2 through 6, 2019 inclusive school week.
Good evening, Mrs. Burke and Dr. Wood and Board of Trustees. I have Angelina Chiara, one of our campus coordinators, here with us today from the intermediate school, and Mrs. Jeanette Shaw from the primary school. Look, Vernon ISD has participated in celebrating Inclusive Schools Week since 2016. During this time, campuses celebrate the achievement of students with disabilities and participate in activities that educate the campus and community about differing abilities. So tonight, we would like to just present to you some of the activities that we have planned on our campuses for Inclusive Schools Week for December 2nd through the 6th.
So at the primary, our theme for Inclusive Schools Week is charting the course for inclusive schools. And the primary students are going to be navigating stations during their PE time so that they become more aware of the tools that our students who have specialized needs are using to be able to access the environment and the curriculum. So they will have opportunities to explore things like Braille books, low vision simulators, voice output devices that help our kids who don't talk be able to speak, have a voice of their own. Also adaptive equipment that helps students to participate in motor activities, whether they're gross motor activities or fine motor activities, and other stations that they'll be able to venture through. What we want to do is to develop their knowledge of these tools that our students who have specialized needs use so that they can be supportive friends in the classroom to help them to be a part of what goes on every day in the school.
Okay, so at the intermediate, it's 1 week that we
celebrate inclusive school, but I mean, it's year-round. So during that 1 week, we are doing a school-wide art activity, which is, I don't know if y'all know our art teacher, Renee Oliveras, but she came to me that first day back during our PD session, and she's like, I have an idea this year for Inclusive School Week. Okay, so I mean, she's been working at it all year already. PE coach and I have been talking for over probably 2 months. We're going to be implementing phase 1 of a new program that focuses on crossing midlines, natural rhythms, and some other things that are it's really going to, it's data supported too, which is really great. So we're working on that in PE, or it's going to be phase 1 in PE. We're going to have some just fun dress-up days in school, celebrating like random acts of kindness with the kids. And then one day we're going to have everyone's wearing name tags so we can, celebrate knowing everyone's name, calling everyone by name. But the real thing, seeing inclusion, just walking through the hallway. Like last week, I just walked through the hall, and you can just look and seeing our patrols in the morning or in the afternoon. You're going to see some special ed kids over there. You're going to see a nonverbal kid, not saying a word, but she's standing there through the hallway. I mean, inclusive. You can come to our after-school clubs or our before-school clubs. You're going to see inclusion going on there. UIL activity started this week, or last week. Today in an art meeting, a parent was talking about how their kid is doing chess club this year, and he's so happy. Inclusive. We do a coffee cart on every Friday. That's our ALE kids walk the halls, selling coffee to the teachers. We have PE leaders teaching that PE program that I was just talking about. One of our ALE students is a leader, teaching other students how to do the program. Very inclusive right there. Not just focusing on the kids with disabilities either. Walk into a classroom, you're going to see some non-English speaking kids paired up with the English speaking kids, in the same group, working together, inclusive. So, I mean, like I said, it's just, we're celebrating it for 1 week, but it's year-round, every day in all the classrooms.
You don't have any questions, comments in regards to Inclusive School Week?
There's similar activities going on at the junior high and high school as
At
well?
the junior high and high school, it's a little different. At the junior high, they are administering daily announcements, just highlighting our students, educating our students in regards to being inclusive within our school setting. At our high school, they're doing similar things as far as announcements, and our student council will be working with our ALE students and scheduling some lunches with them throughout the week. So, those are some of the activities that we have planned.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I move to designate the week of December 2nd through 6th, 2019 as Inclusive School.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you all very much. Next, we'll go on to consider and take possible action on the Proclamation 2020 instructional materials allotment. Adoption members, Ms. Brooke.
Last but not least. Good evening, Dr. Wood, Ms. Burkle, and members of the board. I'm here tonight to ask for your review and approval of the Proclamation 2020 Instructional Materials Adoption Committee. In April of 2018, the State Board of Education had a meeting where they issued Proclamation 2020, which was calls for English language arts and reading instructional materials for high school courses, and as well as second language instructional materials for English as a second language, so for middle school and high school courses. So the adoption, we'll get a list of approved materials from the commissioner. It actually came out on Friday. So at the end of November, they put together the list that they feel meet the requirements that meet the requirements for TEKS, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills for each of those courses, and any materials that meet that, the requirements, then they ask that if we want to, we can use that list, and it will be guaranteed. You do not have to approve off of that list. But the first step is for us to get a committee together, and that's what we're here together tonight to talk to you about. We have a list. These fine folks have been selected to be on our committee. The committee chairperson is Jennifer Durazio. She is our instructional leader for ELAR at 6th through 12th grade. We have several of our high school English teachers listed there that will help with our English 1 through 4. We have included in that adoption are some of the electives that fall under the ELAR genre, and Noah Recker and Morgan Smith will help represent those areas. And we also have enlisted Andrea Tejeda to help with our ESL information on that. Although we have 4 of the high school teachers are actually ESL certified, but Andrea, Ms. Tejeda will help us to know and give us some expertise in that area as well. So we tried to choose people that this is their love and their understanding, and they understand their TEKS, and they'll be able to help us choose materials that will serve the best interests of the kiddos moving forward. Do you have any questions? So this committee will look at the different sources and kind of review, before they bring it to other staff members to get. Yes, ma'am. We actually, they'll come up with a timeline. We have suggested timelines for how we roll it out. They'll meet, we'll go to Region 20, look at some materials. We will have materials brought in for us to look at and to begin sort of working with in our classroom to get an idea whether we like them or not. We'll meet with reps, but always including the other members as well. These guys will just lead the charge and be the ones to start the process.
So you said they were selected based on their love for their content area. Is there any more
Well,
description on how they
yeah,
were
well,
selected?
there are the content specialists. They're the English teachers.
So how were they selected?
They were nominated and then said, okay, they would do it. When you look across that grade level, that's pretty much every ELAR teacher. There's only probably 3 teachers across that, each of those content areas, 2 to 3.
Does this represent all grade levels?
This is just 6 through 12.
6 through 12?
I'm sorry, actually, it's just high school.
Oh,
These are all high school.
no, it's as far as the curriculum, the material that you're looking at.
High school. It's high school ELAR, and there is a 7th and 8th grade ESL piece to it.
Okay,
But for the majority of it is 9th through 12th grade.
okay.
And so each one of these, I would gather, I don't know off the top of my head, so one's a 9, one's a 10.
Yes, ma'am. So,
But no, Amy is.
so Ms. Jerzomic teaches English 4, Amy, Ms. Maiden is 3, Langford is 2, and Melanie Morrison is English 1. So we have a rep in each of those. And then Ms. Smith teaches, she also teaches the English class. I think she teaches English 1 and 2, or 2 and 3, I'm not sure exactly. And then she also teaches journalism, yearbook. Mr. Recker, of course, speech and debate. Communication is a piece of it. He has taught English in the past as well. So while they'll lead the charge, I just want you to know they're not the only ones making that decision. They will actually go through a rubric where everyone gets a voice and a say, and they will take it to their folks on their team. So anything else?
So if there would have been other, say, teachers that wanted to participate, they could have voiced.
They should be teachers as well.
These weren't voluntary.
No.
I move to approve the proclamation 2020 Technology and Instructional Material Adoption Committee member as presented.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is 9:05 and we'll convene into closed session pursuant to Government Code Sections 55107, 55107, 55107, 55176, 5510821, discussion and consultation with legal counsel, including consultation with school districts regarding pending litigation, deliberation regarding real property, executive brief on safety and security, discussion interim superintendent's duties and responsibilities, discuss personnel, including executive director of special services and support programs, 2019-2020, inflationary fund